Good morning, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Gonzalez, and I'm back to be able to read aloud with Esperanza Rising. Okay, so we were on Las Cebollas, but boys and girls, today, as you're listening to Miss Gonzalez read the story, I want you to pay attention, and I want you to pay very close attention to what specific character traits is Esperanza showing here. What kind of character traits is she displaying? I have my perspective icon up here, and I want you to look through the eyes of Esperanza. If you have some sunglasses, put them on. If you have fashion glasses, or if you have regular glasses, just go ahead and put them on. And I want you to look through the perspective of what Esperanza is. Look through that lens so that you can start thinking and feeling what she's actually feeling. And maybe we'll understand those character traits that she's displaying also. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back here, and I'm going to start the read aloud. When Esperanza opened her eyes again, it was almost light, and she heard Mama, Hortensia, and Alfonso talking in the room next door. She had slept through dinner, and the entire night she smelt café and chorizo. The coffee and sausage made her stomach growl, and she tried to remember when she had last eaten. Isabel was still asleep in the bed next to hers, quietly pulled on her long wrinkled shirt and white blouse. She brushed her hair and went into the other room. "Good morning," said Mama. Sit down and eat something. You must be starved." At the table, Hortensia patted her hand. "You missed going to the foreman's office last night. We signed the papers to live here. We already have work today." Mama put a plate of tortillas, eggs, and sausage in front of her. "Where did all the food come from?" asked Esperanza. "Josefina and Hortensia. She brought some groceries until we can go to the store this weekend." "Esperanza," said Mama, "you and Isabel will be watching the babies while the rest of us work. Alfonso and Juan will be picking grapes, and Hortensia, Josefina, and I will be packing grapes in the sheds." "But I want to work with you," said Hortensia, and with Josefina. "You're not old enough to work in the sheds," said Mama. "And Isabel is not old enough to watch the babies by herself. If you watch the babies, then Josefina can work, and that is one more paying job between us. We must all do our part now. You will have a camp job, too, sweeping the wooden platform every afternoon, for which they will deduct a little from our rent each month. Isabel can show you where that looks like later." "What's the platform?" Esperanza asked. "It's the big wooden floor outside in the middle of the camp. Juan said that they use it for meetings and dancing," said Mama. Esperanza stared at her food. She did not want to be stuck in the camp with the children. "Where's Miguel?" she said. "He already left for Bakersfield with some other men to look for work at the railroad," said Alfonso. Isabel came out of the bedroom, rubbing her eyes. "Mi sobrina, my niece," said Hortensia, hugging Isabel. "Go say good morning to your mother and your father before they leave for work." Isabel hugged her and ran next door. Esperanza studied Mama as she made un burrito de frijoles for lunch and wrapped the soft tortilla filled with pinto beans and paper. She looked different. Was it the long cotton dress and the big flowered apron tied at her waist? No, it was more than that. "Mama," said Esperanza, "your hair." Mama's hair ran down her back in a single long braid, almost touching her waist. Esperanza had never seen Mama wear her hair that way. It was always done up in a beautiful plaited bun, or when she was ready for bed, brushed out and flowing. Mama looked shorter and somehow not herself. Esperanza didn't like it. Mama reached back and stroked the back of her hair. She seemed embarrassed. I figured out that I can't wear a hat with my hair on top of my head. And this makes more sense, does it not? After all, I'm going to work today, not a fiesta." Then she hugged Esperanza. "We must go now. The trucks leave at 6:30 to take us to the sheds. Take good care of the babies and stay with Isabel. She knows the camp. As the three of them walked out, Esperanza noticed Mama reaching up, hesitantly touching her hair again. When Esperanza finished eating, she went outside and stood on the front step. Instead of facing another row of cabins, their cabin was in the last row facing the fields. Straight ahead, across a dirt road, were several chinaberry trees and a mulberry tree that provided deep shade over a wooden table. Beyond the row of trees were grape fields, still lush. To the right, across a grassy field, was the main road. A truck piled high with produce drove by, losing a cloud of debris. After it passed, the sharp smell told her they were onions, the dry outer skins being shredded by the wind. Another truck followed. Again, the smell bit into her senses. It was still early, the air was cool, but the sun was bright, and she knew it would be another hot day. The hens pecked and poked around the front steps. They must have been happy to be off the train. Esperanza shooed them out of her way as she turned and walked next door. The babies were still in their pajamas. Isabel was struggling to feed Lupe her oatmeal while Pepe crawled on the floor. Splotches of his cereal still stuck to his cheeks. As soon as he saw Esperanza, he reached up for her. "Let's clean them up," said Isabel, "and then I'll show you the camp." First, Isabel took Esperanza to the platform she was to sweep and showed her where the brooms were stored. Then they walked through the rows of cabins, each with the baby on their hip. As they passed open doors, Esperanza could already smell the beans and onions that someone had started simmering for dinner. Women were dragging big metal wash tubs beneath the shade trees. A group of young boys kicked a ball up and down the dirt road, stirring up dirt. A little girl, wearing a man's undershirt as a dress, ran up to Isabel and took her hand. "This is Sylvia. This is my best friend. Next week we will go to school together." Sylvia switched around and grabbed Esperanza's free hand. Esperanza looked down at Sylvia's dirty hands. Sylvia grinned up at her, and Esperanza's first thought was to pull her hand away and wash it as soon as possible. Then she remembered Mama's kindness to the peasant girl on the train and her disappointment in Esperanza. She didn't want Sylvia to start crying if she were to pull away. She looked around at the dirty camp and thought it must be hard to stay clean in such a place. She squeezed Sylvia's hand and said, "I have a best friend too. Her name is Marisol, and she lives in Aguascalientes." Isabel introduced Esperanza to Irene and Melina, two women who were hanging clothes to dry on a long line stretched between the cabins and a tree. Irene had long gray hair tied in a tail. Melina didn't look much older than Miguel, and she already had a baby of her own. "We heard the story of how you came from Aguascalientes," said Melina. "My husband is from there. He used to work for El Señor Rodriguez." Esperanza's face lit up at this news. "He knew my father since he was a boy? Do you think your husband knew Marisol, Señor Rodriguez's daughter?" Melina laughed. No, I'm sure he didn't. He was a campesino, a field worker. He would not know the family." Esperanza felt awkward and didn't mean to make Melina admit that her husband was a field worker. But Melina didn't seem bothered and began recalling other farms her husband had worked on in Aguascalientes. Isabel pulled on Esperanza's arm. "We need to change the babies." As they walked back to the cabin, she said, "They are mother and daughter. They come over to talk and crochet with my mother all the time." "How did they know all about us already?" Isabel raised her hand and made her fingers tap up and down on her thumb as if her mouth were talking. "Everyone in camp knows each other's business." "Do you know how to change a diaper?" asked Esperanza when they got back to the cabin. "Certainly," said Isabel. "I will change them and you can rinse out the diapers. We need to do some laundry too." Esperanza watched as the young girl laid the babies down one at a time, unpinned their diapers, wiped their bottoms clean, and pinned on fresh diapers. Isabel handed Esperanza the smelly bundles and said, "Take them to the toilets and dump them, and I'll fill the wash tubs." Esperanza held them at arm's length and almost ran to the toilets. Several more onion trucks passed by. Their smells made her eyes and nose as much as the diapers. By the time she got back, Isabel had already filled 2 wash tubs with water from an outside pipe and was swirling soap around in one of them. A washboard was propped inside. Esperanza went to the washboard and hesitated, staring into the water. Bits of onion skins floated on the surface of a soapy water. She held a corner of one of the diapers, lightly dipped it in and out of the water, her hand never getting wet. After a few seconds, she gingerly lifted the diaper from the water. "Now what?" she said. "Esperanza, you must scrub them like this." Isabel walked over, took the diapers, and plunged them into the water up to her elbows. The water quickly became murky. She rubbed the diapers with soap, vigorously scrubbing them back and forth on the washboard, and wrung them out. Then she transferred them to the next tub, rinsing and wringing them again. Isabel shook out the clean diapers and hung them on the line stretched between the chinaberry and the mulberry trees. Then she started on the clothes. Esperanza was so amazed. She had never washed anything in her life, and Isabel was only 8 years old, made it look so easy. Puzzled, Isabel looked at Esperanza. "Don't you know how to wash clothes?" "Well, Hortensia took everything out to the laundry quarters, and the servants, they always..." She looked at Isabel and shook her head. "No." Isabel's eyes got bigger as she looked worried. "Esperanza, when I go to school next week, you will be here alone with the babies and will have to do the laundry." Esperanza took a deep breath and said weakly, "I can learn. And later today, you must sweep the platform. You do know how to sweep, right?" "Of course," said Esperanza. She had seen people sweep many times. Many, many times, she assured herself. Besides, she was already too embarrassed about the washing to admit anything else to Isabel.